The human journey of awakening begins with remembering. This is a phase in our self-realization where we experience the stirring of knowing that what we believed about ourselves and the world isn't fully true. It's when we start once again to gently look at structure and life through the eyes of innocence and wonder. When we start to know in unspoken terms that the things we were taught to fear are actually harmless, and that our smallness is only measured on an imaginary scale of unworthiness. We begin to feel the thrill of revelation, like a sudden intake of breath after a long period of being submerged in illusion. Now, you've experienced moments like these several times. You've experienced moments of perfect, innocent remembering. And these moments are what enlightened living feels like. Those moments of pure clarity, they were like a peaceful acceptance of all things just as they are. A quiet and humble joy, knowing that all is as it should be in this endless sea of creation. Moments when you've quietly watched the world move and sway around you, and you've known that you weren't thinking about anything at all. This was a moment of poise, of sovereignty, where there was nothing manifest preventing a full and wide awake experience of what you were perceiving in that very moment. There was nothing at all in the way of the flow of divine consciousness. Here I am. Where were you when you had these moments? Were you walking in the woods? Were you sitting on the toilet? Were you standing and enjoying the view of a waterfall? Or were you looking into the eyes of your baby? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you do, in fact, know what enlightenment feels like, and you know how to live enlightened because you remember. And now you're here on this journey to submerge yourself in that very divine truth, to become it and to live it openly as a conduit for love as it pours forth unhindered into our shared world. So remembering is about rearranging your ideas and thinking about who you are in the great everything, stepping into the pool of knowing once again. And to start you off, in this class, I'm going to give you a way of modeling the human consciousness. Now, this framework of thinking about the relationship between the big it and the little me, this model is the basis for how the rest of the sovereign strategy is formed and taught. And it greatly simplifies the mystery out there as we walk out to meet life with eyes wide open. Now, this model of human consciousness that you experience here in this class is a beautiful way of making sense of your life. And it will shift how you look at yourself and how you look at life forever, liberating your identity from the world of form, which results in you shifting into a whole new way of being, which you will soon discover. Now, this model is inspired by ancient teachings across universal schools of thought. It incorporates the philosophical perspectives of Aristotle and Heidegger, and it incorporates the quantum physics of Planck and Bohr and Einstein and many other great minds. The model reveals the relationship between the nature of our makeup and the human condition. Now, when we understand the relationship between our true self and our temporary constructed self, the cause and effect chain in our nature becomes very visible. And then perception shifts and everything else follows. Right, let's begin the first phase of your training with this radically empowering understanding of how our consciousness works. Now, who you are and what your life is a mystery beyond measure. It can't be explained or defined, but we can arrange our thinking around some of the parameters that we do know, and that gives us a framework to use to refer to in life. This is extremely empowering because in our human form, we are linear creatures. We function very well with process. So this visual model that I'm going to present to you is a way of taking an inexplicable multidimensional absolute and turning it into a manageable 4D concept. Just like the way that these shapes here linear, two-dimensional, simplified angles help us nonetheless embody the knowing of the word's meaning. So we are understanding that the words are not what love is, but the words are the structure, the framework that is helping us to convey this vast and ineffable frequency. That's what we're going to be doing with the model of human consciousness. I'm going to show you a way of arranging your thinking around who you are. Now, we can all agree that on a microcosmic quantum level, all things are interconnected in an infinite singularity of loving consciousness. There it is. Now, Einstein called this the unified field, but it's also known as the Planck field or pure potentiality, and that's pretty much as far as we know scientifically about the thing that we refer to as God. But the name of it is irrelevant, and its exact nature is a mystery. The aspect of this field that moves is often called spirit, and there are other names for it too: chi, prana, Holy Spirit, life force, essence, word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Just as a raindrop forming in a rain cloud is of the same substance as all the other raindrops and the cloud itself, so too is the human consciousness an individualized expression of this field. Now, in the most simplistic way of describing it, a strand of this essence is drawn out and focused into one laser point. We don't know how many laser points there are, 7,144,000, an infinite number. The discussion goes on across all kinds of religions and paradigms and philosophies, and for this work, it's irrelevant. For this work, all we need to know is that one of these laser points is you. I and my Father are one. Now, the human consciousness is by its nature fractured, not broken, but diamond faceted. Just like this prism, in that it refracts the purity of essence into polarity, the way that the sunlight refracting in a raindrop displays a rainbow, a variety of value. The biblical story calls this having tasted the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. But whatever story we use to illustrate this fundamental characteristic of the human consciousness, we can all agree that in the field of infinite potentiality, we have the ability to observe variety and to place judgments on variety. This is good, this is better, and this is very bad. These judgments become paradigm, stories of what is true about ourselves and life that is held in the field of consciousness that we call the DNA. And we could perhaps also call this DNA, we could also call it Jacob's ladder. The ladder between heaven and earth. Now, the creative essence moves through the diamond and its many stories, and it takes on the colors and the textures of what we have decreed is true about us and variety. It condenses as energy that moves out into the holographic quantum soup, or the matrix, as some people call it, but that I prefer to call life. This energy is made of heart wave and brain wave and subtle life force and electromagnetic output, as well as other frequencies, and it's often called the biofield. So this is the this is the frequency that is emitted from a cellular level through every level of your being, through your body, through your consciousness, out into the biofield and out into life. It's a signal that goes out into the holographic infrastructure that is the cosmos, and that magnetizes or attracts corresponding frequencies. So, manifest reality, which is made of the same substance as the rest of the rain cloud, arranges itself in response to that energy, just like metal shavings scurrying to form the shapes and the textures that are commanded by the magnets, you see. Now, it's a little bit of a mystery how the science of this works, but we have the beginning of some understanding from quantum experiments like the double slit, or thought experiments like Schrodinger's cat, that prove that all possible outcomes are held in a field of potentiality until an observation or a judgment is made, right? And then that field of potentiality is collapsed into particle form as one of those potentials, the one that you experience. In short, life is malleable, and it takes on the shape of the stories that we tell, and then we dance with it through trauma and reconciliation and adventuring and forgetting and remembering again. Think of a stained glass window in a holy sanctuary, like your mind is. The sunlight is pure and whole on one side of it, and when it shines through the window, it becomes the stories embedded in the glass. Now, the sunlight has not been compromised in any way. It is still as whole and as perfect as it always was. But when it shines through the windows, it becomes the stories embedded into the glass, and it will project those stories of the window onto the flagstone floor for you to experience as life. When we try to change what we see, we often get distracted trying to scrub the floor. And people can easily spend their whole life in therapy or medication or as spiritual seekers, trying to alter the effect on the floor. Let's look at what this means in a relationship, for example. If you have Cyprus Essential Oil, this is a great one for this next exercise, which is a visualization exercise. The cypress tree, you see, has been associated with everlastingness for a really long time. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, they all associated cypress with the afterlife and the before life, and even Shakespeare wrote about its use in death time. Now, cypress is associated with the root chakra, chakra 1, vitality, physical energy, and self-preservation and life force, and the third eye chakra, which is chakra 6, central nervous system, insight and inspiration. So it's perfect for remembering. You can take a drop and rub it in the palms of your hands, or you can diffuse it if you like, or I like to just inhale it directly from the bottle. Let the essence of Grandfather Cypress travel through your olfactory nerve and into the brain, into the rest of the body, into the energy fields and into your consciousness. And close your eyes. Breathe really deeply. And in your own way, ground down and sink in. Clear the canvas of your mind with a few deep breaths, and let the thoughts and images dissolve into the background. Pay no notice of them for now. These thoughts and images of the world are suspended and poised in your consciousness, ready for you to return to later. But for now, gaze deeply into the blank, dark nothingness of your imagination. This is rich clay, and we can build anything out of it. And now, if you're ready, if you haven't already, open your eyes and stay in this space of creative imagination and follow along with me on the whiteboard. Now, think of a stained glass window, the sort that you would see in a holy sanctuary like your mind is. The sunlight is pure and whole on one side of it, and then when it shines through the window, it becomes the stories embedded in the glass. And the sunlight has not been compromised in any way. It is still as whole and perfect as ever before. But on our side of the window, we get to see that it is projecting the stories of the window onto the flagstone floor for you to experience as life. Look, Here are the stories of your life playing in feedback loops. You can see the paradigms that are written in the window by the shapes and colors and movement that you're experiencing in your life. You can try catching one of the stories, let's say in one of your relationships or your circumstances or any of the manifest symptoms of life. Try catching one of these stories and then changing it by grasping at the stone floor. You could alter the experience of the stories by putting a rug down or changing the floor material, or you could place some items here. But the essence is still the same. These are your paradigms dancing across the surface of your life. But if we direct our awareness into the consciousness first, and then we let a new perspective govern the energy fields and the molecular structure, then things change very fast. Since the choices we make all compound to make our life's experience, including our bodies, our most intimate manifestation, it is much quicker to realign our awareness and come into presence than it is to learn new habits by will and discipline alone. Now you can see that trying to learn new habits or trying to alter the manifest world by will and discipline alone is a metaphysical error that's sometimes called outlining. It's swimming upstream, basically. We make much better choices naturally when we're in a state of alignment. So instead of learning and researching and analyzing all of the conflicting everything to try and arrive at the correct data to inform our choices, we focus instead on nurturing our state of alignment so that we can maintain presence. Then we are equipped to follow intuition. Now, when we cultivate that art, we are naturally drawn to healthful choices, not because we really ought to, but because we desire it. For example, without even studying any reference material, we're more likely to reach for the one essential oil that happens to have the exact chemical composition to support the brain and heart through the specific challenge that we're dealing with today. Not because we've learned all the facts and figures and trained ourselves to conduct ourselves in a militantly healthy way, but because we just want to. Now let's look at what this means in a relationship, for example. Stand with me here in the cathedral of your life and look up here to the window that is your consciousness. Now, if we examine this lovely stained glass here that we have, it's full of color and texture, full of your experiences. We can see all of the stories that are written as codes in your DNA. Maybe they look a bit like, if work isn't hard, then it isn't really work, or suffering is a part of a noble life, or there is a right way to live and I don't know what it is, or they don't understand me, or I am a target for sexual predators, or the government is out there to get me, or humans are destroying the planet, or men are a part or an agent of an evil patriarchy, or I am unlovable. Watch them and you'll see beyond a shadow of a doubt that these things are stories that are formed by decisions made about what is true about you and about life. Know without a shadow of a doubt that these are stories. And know that they are sacred, even if they're formed in error, because all things in heaven and earth are of the same source and substance of God. Now, staying in this visualization, turn your gaze with me and let's look at the stone floor here under the window. Here is the window of your consciousness. Now, if you see here, look at this model. You can imagine if we take this model and we place it on its side, we see here the window and the beautiful imagery all around it is on the floor is the projection of those beliefs into the world. This is the projection of those beliefs, and this is the thoughts that you have about those beliefs. And it is also the feelings that you have about the thoughts you have about those beliefs. So It is what you think about life and what you feel about what you think about life. Now, another window appears in the wall, projecting onto another patch of the floor. This is your mother or father or husband or ex-wife. Oops, that's not very even, but you get the point. And it's that one's stories. And the image of on the floor is what they think about life and what they feel about what they think about life. You see, there's a feedback loop. Now, what happens in relationship is that these two windows project onto a similar patch of floor, the same patch of floor. Now, the imagery is much more murky and it's hard to make out. This is relationship. Because here we have, this is the meeting of what you think about life and what you feel about what you think about life, and what they think about life and what they feel about what they think about life, plus what you believe about what they think about life and what you feel about what you believe they think about life, and what they believe you think about life and what they feel about what they think you think about life. So what you get in here now is quite an algorithmic mess. So liberation, therefore, is not in trying to understand life and the other through these distortions here of an overly complex, interlinked paradigms system, but to gaze deeply inwardly at the facts and stories that make up this framework through which we are viewing the world. So, to purify and to simplify the facets of the diamond, is what life mastery is. It is the systematic intention and work for greater vibrational harmony, both in life and in circumstance and on the inside. Mastery is not control. It is the art and craft of practicing sovereignty in life. True mastery is only possible when we're no longer attached as form identity. We no longer believe this projection, but instead we engage with it as its lover, not as its victim. Now, on the path of life mastery, which is equal parts wisdom and method, what we do is we identify the triggers in the world that invoke an emotional response. See? And we acknowledge which emotional responses ignite which thought patterns. And we acknowledge the feeling that results from the thoughts that are ignited by the emotional responses to external triggers. We acknowledge all of this as a result of paradigm. Paradigm is any story in the window that we've adopted as fact about what potentials are true in the field of infinite potentiality. I'll say that again. It is any story in the window that we have adopted about as fact about which potentials are true in this field of infinite potentiality. It is a judgment, an observation that collapses wave into particle form and makes your experience real and manifest. In life mastery, we examine those facts and then we choose anew. By releasing this data from the DNA field and gently installing a new, more beneficial truth, we can do this with curiosity and wonder. What will life be like when I no longer believe that suffering is what makes me worthy? Or when I no longer believe that failure is dangerous? Or when I no longer believe that time is of the essence? Or when I now believe that I am loved, loving and lovable forever. Now, it's tricky because the world is full of these triggers. These triggers are little globules of evidence that have manifested in support of your old beliefs. They are the results of former paradigm. Now, these triggers invoke the emotional response. And that's okay. And the emotional response triggers pattern thought. And that's okay too. And then what we feel about what we think, that becomes a vibrational output into the world of form. And the cycle continues. But breaking this cycle is much easier than you think, especially now that you have this understanding and you use this framework of thinking to identify triggers and emotional programming, mental programming, and paradigm. Now, this sovereign... I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. I know you will find it useful as you refer back to it throughout Sovereign and in your life. Sovereign, a way of enlightenment, is a course that will systematically take you through the steps necessary to change the stories in the cathedral window. This is it for you. This is the framework that you have been praying for, that will guide you, give you structure and direction to the good inner work that you have been doing to live as an enlightened master on this earth. So, download the PDF infographic of this visual model and then keep it with you to refer back to as you do life.